Hello all. Okay, so for today, this is going to be my presentation on how I read Oroonoko and how I'm going to help you too. Now, three main things that I find in reading would be the historical context and the literary movement that it's in, as well as the reading lens you're using, and finally, if you're taking good notes. Now, Oroonoko was written by Aphra Behn, who was a female English novelist. The book was published in 1688, and during this time it was one of the first novels, so there's a mixed genre as well as no structure. Now, in the English politics, because history always reflects itself in the literature, in 1685, King Charles II died, and a new king took his throne. This was causing a rile-up with the citizens and the parliament because of James's Roman Catholicism. Many of the civilians were unhappy and they started revolting and they started riots, and it was not good because a king's word should never be gone against, and this is also reflected in the book. Now, as we bring it up to the book's setting, we can see that they have themes of rebellion, betrayal, and slavery. Now, the narrator of the book, which was unique as it was a friend of the main character, had a very pro-European voice. Now, for my reading process of Oroonoko, I like to take my time and take detailed annotations. Now, I also like to begin a book with an understanding of the time period, and my annotations are color-coded. I do this because I'm a very visual person, and I can keep track of these certain things I annotate for easily and quickly with the colors. To check a reader's understanding, I recommend going section by section. Each reader can determine that by themselves, whether it has to be a difficult sentence, a passage, a page, or a chapter. In this case, there are no chapters. I typically need help whenever it's very action-packed. Many facts are thrown at you, and it kind of gets jumbled up, so I will reread until I understand. Reading each passage vividly helps with your visualization of the character as well as the scene. It creates more like a movie in your mind, which is how books should be. Now, even when there's assignments, I do not recommend speeding through the sections that you should be reading. You should set aside time because in certain circumstances, for me, I cannot read at night because I fall asleep and I don't pay attention. But everyone is different. Now, reading lenses happen when a certain reader has a bias or a lens, or it's just how the reader will read a book. It is a literary theory that will reveal different aspects of literature that you may not see yourself. Now, many readers will pass along lenses or create their own to explore and publish how they see the book. It gives a better understanding of the book itself. Now, like I said, anyone can create a lens, and I created a central lens. Central lens is a psychological lens, which is it's about how the character thinks and acts depending on how they're raised, and it's not based upon history or setting. It focuses on lifestyle and emotions, and with all elements of the lens brings questions that are asked. Now, I typically will ask how the character's upbringing will affect how they see and act and question circumstances and situations. Also, how humble is the character, but is that a true character, or is that just kind of a facade? Another key aspect is if the hierarchy and social class of the character being broken down Does it affect how they see others and how they act around them? Now, for Oroonoko, he was raised in a high class. He was raised as royalty. He owned slaves himself, and he was a natural-born leader as he served in the military. Now, he sees himself highly, and even as a slave, he basically became what could be considered as slave royalty. He didn't work the fields, and when he tried to lead a revolt, the families knew that the family came first instead of freedom, because what will you have if you don't have each other? Oroonoko did not understand this as he didn't really connect with their culture too much. Now, good annotations react to the text as they're happening with, it could be a sentence or a question, wondering what's happening, predicting what happens next. It could also be summarizing dates, characters, or your comprehension. Dates I like to keep track of as I see the flow and progression of time throughout a book and how quickly paced it is. Now, with good annotations comes bad annotations. Highlighting with no descriptive details on the sides, it doesn't help. You're just highlighting random things, and as you skim quickly, it leads to reading spark notes, which can easily sometimes be an invalid source. It's not reliable, and you don't get the true experience and comprehension of reading the text yourself. Now, reading is always good with a sample annotation, so in the left I have the elements I have listed in this screencast. In the bottom right hand corner I give a key of colors and ideas of what I personally annotate for. Each passage won't have all the colors, but that is fine. So we start out with Oroonoko, and we have a couple things of his features. He is described as a great character. He is well educated as he spoke French and English. He has the physical feature of being tall, and the narrator describes him as being exact and nobly formed. And I can visualize a great person. Now, an important detail I noticed was the narrator describes him as being not being a brown rusty black, but a perfect ebony or polished jet. The narrator's begun putting Oroonoko on this pedestal. Now the narrator describes his color, but even with this, the narrator has a pro-European tone, which does lead the history to affect the novel itself. With all this pro-white and pro-European views, it's easily seen that the main character, being of color, is not well off in the end, as he's being torn apart limb by limb. Now that's all I have to say, and I thank you for joining my podcast. Screencast. Thank you.